Good afternoon, everybody. We are just allowing people to funnel into the meeting. We'll just give folks a few more minutes to join, and I will just keep allowing folks to join as they get to the meeting, even if they join a little bit later, that's totally fine. Welcome everyone to the final Growing Organic Expertise workshop. We are so delighted to have you here today. And yeah, very excited to see a good turnout here. And as more people funnel in, I'll kind of give it a couple more minutes and then we'll start with introductions. Hi, Megan. So during this workshop, we ask that you please stay muted during the presentation. During the Q&A portion, if you want, you can certainly unmute yourself and ask your questions if you wish. You can also use the chat box to add your questions for the speakers. What I will do on my end is I will allow the speakers to do their presentations fully, and then I'll start asking the questions. So just to give them the opportunity to go through all of their slides. And we'll kind of do that with each presenter, allow them to present and do the Q&A portion at the end. And welcome, everyone. My name is Olga Redding, and I am the Iowa Organic Association Education and Outreach Coordinator. I am in charge of handling, organizing all of the events, all of the education events for Iowa Organic Association. And we like to call Iowa Organic Association IOA. So if you hear that abbreviation, that's what that means. Please, if you have ideas or things that you would like to see from us moving forward, feel free to reach out to me and give me your suggestions. We are always happy to hear suggestions. The best way to reach me is via email at olga@iowaorganic.org. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen and show you guys the agenda for today, just so you have an idea of what's happening. And then here is the agenda. And I have a few more people that are trickling in. So okay, so what we'll do is we'll do introductions. Roz is actually unable to join, so it will be just me. We will introduce each speaker. Each speaker will get the opportunity to actually introduce themselves. And then at around 12:15, I will present on USDA organic history and background. Then at around 12:45, Jamey Meyer with Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship will present on organic regulations and certification overview, some more in-depth information regarding how to become certified and what that entails. At around 1:15, we'll take a 10-15 minute break, depending on our if we're running long or short. So hopefully 15 minutes. And then after that, Megan Thomas with Mercaris will talk about organic agronomics. And then we'll wrap up our workshop today with a presentation from two organic farmers, Kim Andersen and Nelson Smith. And finally, we'll adjourn at 3 o'clock. So what I will do is I'll stop sharing my screen and I will just pick on our presenters and I'll give Jamey the opportunity to present himself.
Thanks, Olga. My name is Jamey Meyer. I am the organic inspector for the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. I've done that job for about 8 years. and I do organic inspections. I also do some file review, and I do all of the unannounced inspections and sampling as well.
Thank you, Jamey, for being here today. All right, next up, we'll have Megan introduce herself.
Thanks, Olga. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Thomas, and I work as one of the economists on staff at Mercaris, and I co-author several of our reports and publications, as well as keep an eye on market trends. So that's what I'll be talking about today. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here today. All right, then we'll go to Kim.
Hello, I'm Kim Andersen, and I farm near Brighton, Iowa. I'm also online faculty for Southern New Hampshire University and have a seed business, so I wear many hats.
Plus, Kim is on our board of directors. She's a board member. So thank you, Kim, for being here today and presenting. And finally, Nelson.
Hello, I'm Nelson Smith. I also live next to Brighton. We're on the other side of Brighton from Kim, so we don't have to worry about farming together. But we have a farm here that we do row crops, and we've been organic since 1997.
Awesome. Thank you, Nelson. And both Nelson and Kim will be on our farmer panel, so you'll get to hear even more from them. So stay tuned for that. So what I will do now, you guys, is I'll go ahead and share my screen with my presentation. And I have a few presentations open, so here, just 1 second. All right. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see the presentation. All right, so I have a little bit of trivia here for you guys. So feel free to either unmute yourself or put your responses in the chat box. But here is the first question. What is the #1 organic commodity in the United States measured in sales? And I know we have close to 30 people, so somebody has to guess.
Corn.
Okay, corn. No, it's not corn, but that's a good guess. It's actually milk. So here is a slide that shows milk. As you can see, milk was first in 2015. Milk continues to be first in 2019. You know, eggs and broilers switched places, but then apples and lettuce, they just stay the same. So these are the top 5 here for you guys. All right, the next question is, what is the #1 organic field crop in the US measured in sales? All right, so we have soybeans, corn, hay, some of the responses. All right, let's see, you guys. It's corn. It is corn. It actually has gone up since 2016 by 70%. So, all right. Next question, or what state is #1 in organic corn grain production, acres and bushels harvested?
Iowa.
All right. That was easy. Good job. Good work. So as you can see, Iowa, we have 37,000 acres, 5 million bushels, $38 million in sales. And Minnesota is #2. Okay, what state is #1 in organic soybean production, acres and bushels harvested? Not all at once, guys.
Illinois.
Okay, so we got Illinois and Iowa. Mike, good job. It is Iowa. 22,000 acres, 865,000 bushels with $15.5 million in sales, and Michigan is number 2. All right, so this is all as far as trivia is concerned. And on this particular slide, I kind of want to point out this this information, and I'll actually read it for you guys quick. But from the 2019 organic survey, it shows that the total sales of 9.93 billion in organic commodity products, it's an increase of $2.37 billion or 31% from the 2016 organic report. In addition, according to the survey, there were 16,585 certified organic farms in the US last year, which represents a 17% increase from 2016. And it accounted for 5.5 million certified acres, an increase of 9% over 2016. And also, as you can see, Iowa ranks number 6 between all of the states in the United States as far as organic production. California, of course, is number 1. But the reason why this slide is so important is because, as you guys can see, the growth is huge. In the span of 3 years, the organic, is growing by 30%, which is huge. And what that tells me is that this is not just a trend, this is a movement that is growing and will continue to do so for years to come. And we are really excited to see that, and hopeful to see more in the coming years. So what is the definition of organic production? And this is a definition that comes directly from the National Organic Program. And they define it as a production system that is managed in accordance with the Organic Fruit Production Act to respond to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biodiversity. Okay, so organic agriculture uses a systems approach. And what does that mean? That means that there is minimal use of external off-farm inputs. So if you're organic, you have to exclude synthetic fertilizers, synthetic pesticides, growth hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified organisms, also known as GMOs. Management that maintains and enhances ecological balance, which involves soil and water conservation and improvement. It also means increased biodiversity of the farm and its surroundings, use of crop rotations and cover crops to recycle nutrients, build soil quality, and disrupt pest and weed cycles, and use of biological and mechanical pest controls as a last resort. A little history on organic agriculture. Sir Albert Howard, born in 1873, he is considered the father of modern composting practices. He wrote the Agricultural Testament in the 1940s and emphasized the importance of humus holding water in the soil and mycorrhizal soil fungi. Influenced J.I. Rodale, which we'll talk about in the coming slides. And one of Sir Albert's quotes is, "The maintenance of the fertility of the soil is the first condition of any permanent system of agriculture." Lady Eve Balfour, born in the late 1800s, she designed the first long-term comparison of organic and conventional agricultural methods, and she wrote The Living Soil. in 1943. One of her famous quotes is, "The most frequently heard argument is that intensive chemical farming provides the only hope of feeding the expanding world population and has therefore to be accepted whether we like it or not. To me, it seems probable that the exact opposite could prove to be the case, and that it is an alternative and largely organic agriculture that will be forced upon us whether we like it or not." And of course, we at Iowa, we like that. So J.I. Rodale, born in 1898, he is the father of modern organic farming movement. He founded Rodale Inc. Publishing in the 1930s and Organic Farming and Gardening magazine in 1942. He purchased a farm in Pennsylvania in 1941 and founded the Soil and Health Foundation in 1947. He fostered scientific research and study, and he provided the main source of information about non-chemical farming methods and was heavily influential in the development of organic production methods. Again, one of his famous quotes, "Healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people." Of course, in his footsteps, his son, Robert Rodale, in his father's footsteps is what I meant, bought a 333,000 acre farm in Kutztown, Pennsylvania in the 1970s, began the farming system trial in 1980s, which is the longest running organic versus conventional comparison in the United States. We'll discuss some of that a little bit later. And he introduced New Farm magazine in 1979 and coined the term regenerative organic to distinguish a kind of farming that goes beyond sustainable in 1989. So with this history, there were at one point, there were many standards and many certifiers. And finally in 1990, the Organic Foods Production Act was created and implemented in 2002. So it took 12 good years to get it implemented. And now we have only one standard of USDA organic. And on the bottom of this slide, you see some of the certifying agencies that help folks become organic certified and do the inspections. So one of them is Oregon TILF and Maine Organic Farmers Association, and all these other ones too, like Washington State Department of Agriculture. And then Jamey, he's with Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. They are a certifying agency too. So a little history on the organic movement. Demand steadily increased in organic products in 1970, and there was a big environment and consumer demand. And as I mentioned earlier, the certification programs were decentralized in the 1980s, and each state had their own rules. So it wasn't a cohesive, program or system that was available to everyone. Everyone did something different. So finally, Congress passed the Organic Foods Production Act, also known by OFPA, in 1990. And this act, USDA is to write rules and regulations to explain the law to producers, handlers, and certifiers. And the National Organic Standards Board was established to make recommendations for allowable substances on organic production and handling, and to help USDA write these regulations. And the National Organic Program was finally written and implemented in 2002. And here is the Organic Foods Production Act. You can find it under section 2101, and just look at more in detail if you wish. It's mandated by the Organic Fruits Production Act and administered, like I said, by USDA Agricultural Marketing Services and defined by Agriculture Code of Regulations Part 205. which shows how it operates and what it regulates. So if you really want to get into it, you can certainly find this online. This is public record, and you can really look at all the definitions as they are written by the National Organic Program. A little about National Organic Standards Board. So who are these folks? These folks are appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture for a 5-year term. They make recommendations concerning the implementation of the National Organic Program, and they meet publicly twice a year. And the board is made up of 15 members, 4 of which own and operate an organic farming operation, 2 own or operate an organic handling operation, 1 owns and operates a retail establishment with significant trade in organic products, 3 have expertise in areas of environmental protection and resource conservation, 3 represent public interest or consumer interest groups. 1 has expertise in the fields of toxicology, ecology, and biochemistry. And finally, we have at least 1 USDA accredited certifying agent. So if you haven't come across this particular website, I would highly encourage you to start utilizing it. It's a very handy tool where you can search up-to-date and accurate information about operations that may exist in your state or in other states that sell organic. The primary reason for this database is to increase supply chain transparency for buyers and sellers and promotes market visibility for organic operations. And here is the link how you can access. But a really handy thing that you can do is you can actually search the operation by your zip code and narrow it down by however many miles away from where you are, and really find out who those organic operations are in your area if you want to support them. A little on trends and farmer perspectives as far as organic. So certified organic farms in the United States, as I mentioned in a previous slide from the organic survey, Iowa is ranked 6th out of all the states in the United States. And as you can see, California is number 1 and Wisconsin is number 2. As far as organic farms, you also get a snapshot here. California has about 3,000 farms, where Iowa has 779, Wisconsin about 1,300. All right, so a little bit about acres under production in Iowa. So corn, this is just conventional acres. Corn represents about 14.4 million acres, soybeans about 9.3 million acres, and wheat about 12,000. Compared to certified organic corn, which is 38,000 acres, certified organic soybeans, which is 21,000 acres, and wheat, which is 1,300 acres. As you can see, a drastic difference in the amount of acres that we produce of organic. And despite the fact that, it's quite a bit lower than the conventional production, we are still ranked 6th in the country. Ross had the pleasure of doing this map here, and it basically shows the organic operations in each county in the state of Iowa. So as you can see, almost every single county in the state has at least 1 organic operation. The only one that I see that doesn't have one is Osceola. So we need to check in with them. But as you can see, the rest have at least 1. We are hopeful and hoping this trend continues and there's more and more. And so that kind of gives you a snapshot. As you can see, Johnson and Buchanan have quite a few operations. Organic Trade Association is a great resource. They do various surveys every single year. And one of their surveys was in regards to US households purchasing organic products. In this survey, they they basically computed the national average to 82%. So of course it varies from state to state. There are even some states that have 90% or more of households that buy organic on regular basis. Obviously the West Coast right here, as you can see, and Iowa, we're about at 70%. But really what that tells me is that more and more people are becoming familiar with organic and are choosing organic over conventional for their families. There was actually a study that I came across that talked about millennials being the biggest decision makers and having the biggest buying power as of today. And as millennials transition and become parents, they don't waver on organic. They always choose organic for their kids. So that's pretty interesting to learn. All right, so trends and value. Organic sales exceed $55 billion in 2019. So one thing that I wanted to point out on this particular slide is the total of organic. So as you can see, it's been increasing steadily, and it's, we're hoping to see this number grow. So conventional versus organic prices, where can you find the organic prices? Well, you can actually navigate to our website, iowaorganic.org, and you can check out this orange orange button at the top of our page that says markets. So as of the most recent information that we could gather, conventional corn is about $4.85 a bushel, where organic corn is $7.49, which represents 155% premium. Soybeans or conventional soybeans are around $12.92, and organic soybeans are around $17.97, which is 139% premium. And actually, Megan with Mercaris, she'll mention more on this too, so stay tuned for that. An opportunity for Iowa farmers. Organic livestock feed demand is outpacing domestic production. So US demand is reliant on organic grain imports into the United States. Approximately 20% of the organic corn that is used for feed in the US is imported from other countries. Organic whole corn is imported from Argentina, and cracked corn is imported generally from Turkey. And approximately 70% of the organic soybeans and organic soybean meal that is consumed in the US is also imported. Most of it comes from India. US organic exports and imports. Here's a slide. US organic exports reach about $548 million in 2016. The top US organic exports were apples, grapes, and lettuce. Canada and Mexico accounted for 70% of the US organic exports, and Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea were also among top trading partners for organic products with the United States. And as you can see, a pretty big contrast on imports. We've imported about $1.65 billion in 2016. Some of the biggest imports included bananas, coffee, olive oil, and as you can see highlighted here is corn and soybeans. Turkey, Mexico, Italy, Peru, and Ecuador supplied 43% of the imports. However, overall, the imports came from around 87 countries across the globe. So as I pointed to the Rodale Institute that I will be talking more about them and that farming systems trial. Here is a slide that talks about these trials. This is a decade-long research that has shown the organic systems are competitive with conventional yields after a 5-year transition period, produce yields up to 40% higher in times of drought, earn 3 to 6 times greater profits for farmers, leach no toxic chemicals into waterways, use 45% less energy, and release 40% fewer carbon emissions. In addition, the most recent information that I could find from a Rodale Institute regarding their systems trial is that there is around 72 different experiments and different trials that they're running at the moment, to include organic manure, conventional and synthetic, no-till systems. But really, the part that is most interesting to me is this information to the left, that shows income, expenses, and returns in organic and conventional systems. So as you can see, green is organic, gray is conventional. So for income, organic outpaces conventional. For expenses, organic is slightly less than conventional, and so obviously returns are higher for organic systems, organic farming systems. So what is the farmer perspectives on organic transition? Believe it or not, most of the farmers have value-based reasons and motivations behind switching from conventional and organic. Most, as you can see, 91% fits my value and or family values. 86% concerns about the environment and concerns about human health obviously potential increase in profit is out there too, but as you can see, some of the value-based motivations are higher. What are some farmer perspectives on organic transition and obstacles? Well, it's no surprise, but weed management is up there, as well as the cost of certification. So some of these things we will address, with the presentations from Jamey and obviously with our farmer panels. So stay tuned for more on that. What kind of support would be most useful to these farmers willing to transition? Well, number one is mentoring from experienced organic farmers, and then one-on-one technical assistance during transition and in-person workshops or short courses. And so that's what we're here to do. So as far as resources, there's quite a few of them. I will go through them pretty quickly. So if you guys have questions or need me to be a little bit slower, let me know in the chat box. Here is the first resource, is the FSA Organic Certification Cost Share Program. So as an organic farmer, you have the ability to get a cost share up to 50% of your organic certification costs, not to exceed $500 per certification scope. So basically what that means is, if you had at least $500 in costs to become organic certified, like your inspection and certification fee, well, you can get it back. You can get up to $500 back. What you need to do is get in touch with your FSA office in your county that you live in and get that paperwork in. It's pretty self-explanatory. Once you do this once, you kind of know what to do next time. So it's not too complicated. Another program is the NRCS Equip Organic Initiative Program. Of course, you can access more information at the Natural Resource Conservation Service site, and they offer, I believe last I saw, up to $30,000 in help depending on your farming operation. The USDA National Organic Program, of course, is a huge resource. You can look at market news, rules and regulations, and various other resources. The USDA Organic Integrity Learning Center, if you really want to get into more learning, this particular website offers learning modules that you can take on your own free of charge and really learn more. NRCS Growing Organic is another resource here. You can access that on their website, nrcs.usda.gov/organic. And then, of course, please don't forget about us, Iowa Organic Association. We have quite a few resources on our website, and one of the most comprehensive resources that farmers tend to, utilize most is our organic resource directory, available on our website. You can access this via PDF, save it to your computer, or if you wish, I would be more than happy to mail you a few paper copies. We have quite a few available, so just let me know. Feel free to email me, and I'd be more than happy to send them out your way if you're the type of person that likes to hold something in your hands rather than have everything on your computer. But this resource directory, basically covers all of these things listed, from farmers markets to organic CSAs to soil testing labs, on and on and on. It's very, very useful tool on this journey. Kathleen Dellett with Iowa State University. She is a professor of organic agriculture. She does a lot of research. She has a farm that she, has been raising organic and doing various trials. A huge resource. We partner with her frequently, and stay tuned for more workshops, including her. So definitely come and check out our calendar on our website to hear more from her in the future. Midwest Organic Sustainable Education Service. They have a plethora of information on their website, so definitely check them out if you'd like more information. As well as University of Wisconsin-Madison O-Grain Network. The O-Grain Network has a listserv that I would highly recommend subscribing to. It's basically organic farmers asking questions of each other and helping each other out through email. So it's kind of a nice community of organic folks. Plus, there's other resources available on their website, of course. Rodale Institute, as we've mentioned before, definitely give them a look to. They have this training, which is called Organic Transition Course, that has detailed information about, why organic, soils, crops, marketing, certification, and so forth. Organic Agronomic Training Service, also goes by OATS, is kind of a more in-depth growing organic expertise, if you may. You really get more technical. Our executive director, Roz, participated in one of these trainings and was thoroughly impressed with the amount of information that she left with after the training. A National Center for Appropriate Technology in ATRA, which is sustainable agriculture. They have documentation forms for organic crop and livestock producers and various other resources. SARE, which is the Sustainable Agriculture and Research Education. They have an amazing array of information, and thanks to SARE, we are able to create these workshops. We received a grant from them that we're grateful for, and due to that, we can do these workshops. And finally, eOrganic, another resource that is super handy. Feel free to check them out. And as always, if you are a farmer or if you know of a farmer that is looking to transition and has questions, please, please, please send them my way, or, get in touch with either myself or Roz. We are here to help you in any way, shape, or form. If we don't know the answer to your question, we will find it, and we'll find the person that can give you more information. But we're always here to help you. We are the community that organic farmers need. So we're here for you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Does anyone have any questions? Let me check. Okay, so here, Andrea has a question. What is the average yield for an organic corn crop in Iowa? That is a very good question, Andrea. I don't know that answer. Jamey, do you know that answer by chance?
I would say that it obviously varies throughout the state, but we kind of say a general rule is a good organic farmer can yield 10 to 15% below the county average for conventional fields.
Okay, 10 to 15% below the organic.
Yeah, because even if you do a great job farming organically, you still have the tire tracks across the field, and all that comes into play.
Okay.
You're going to be running some crop over.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Kim says depends on where in Iowa. Yeah, so but that's a good kind of understanding, 10 to 15% below conventional yield. So whatever that yield may be in that county conventionally, just subtract a little bit 10 to 15% off of that to kind of get a general idea. All right. Are there any other questions, you guys? I know I breezed through that pretty quick, and I'm happy to report I am on time. I'm actually 3 minutes early, which is good news. If there are no questions that have popped in right now, that's totally fine. No worries. Feel free to type into the chat box later. I will keep looking at them and sifting through them. However, we can go ahead and move forward with Jamey's presentation. Jamey, if you're ready to go.
Okay, thanks, Olga. I'm going to attempt to share my screen now.
Oh, Mike Carberry had a question. Can hydroponics be certified organic? And Jamey, do you want to?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So here at the Iowa Department of Agriculture, we do not certify hydroponics. I think there are some certifiers in the US that do. The main reason we don't is because there's no soil.
Yeah. So Mike, to respond to your question, yes, hydroponics can be certified organic, but before you decide to do that, let's say, you definitely want to make sure that your certifying agency is able to certify them. So as you can see, Iowa Department of Agriculture doesn't do that, even though they are a certifying agency. So there might be some limitations as far as who can certify them organic for you. Okay, Greg said, will my slides be available to use publicly? I am more than happy to send the slides to either you, Greg, specifically, or to everyone that attended today. They are, happy to share. So I'll be sure to share them along with everyone. All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, we will go ahead and move to Jamey Jamey's presentation, and then we'll take questions after he's done.
Okay, can you see it okay, Olga? You hear me? Okay, she's giving me the thumbs up, so I'll get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the main regulations involved in organic, and also tell you a little bit more about what we do at the Iowa Department of Agriculture. So the organic claim, what it is and what it is not, it's not really a chemical-free claim, a natural claim, or a health claim. As far as the chemical-free goes, it really kind of depends on what you define as a chemical. There are certain synthetic substances that are allowed in organics, and we'll get into those here in a little bit. As far as the natural claim, natural is really a loose term and it's not regulated by anybody. You know, you may see natural sweeteners or natural vegetables, and there's really no certification or verification process to make that claim. And organic is not really a health claim. So while it has different benefits, it's not really going to make you lose weight, or, you know, it's not a good exercise routine to just eat organic. So organic versus non-GMO. This is an important concept. Organic is non-GMO, but non-GMO is not necessarily organic. And there's really two boats of non-GMO producers. On one hand, you've got producers that are in their transition years to organic. They will grow non-GMO crops and they will cultivate them and use untreated seeds and no prohibited substances during the transitional years. And they will sell the transitional crop, which is non-GMO, on the non-GMO market. You've also got another group of producers that they're just in it to grow non-GMO crops. They will, you know, spray these crops with different herbicides. They'll use treated seeds and synthetic fertilizers. Farmers that have no goal to go organic, but they're just in it for the non-GMO premium, which is usually anywhere from $1 to $1.50 more per bushel. So here's some common terms, and Olga really did a good job of touching on some of these, but these are kind of the main ones that are thrown around. So when we refer to the NOP, we're talking about the National Organic Program. The certifier is the actual agency that you have chosen to work with, and the inspector is the person that actually comes to your farm. I see the word certifier and inspector get thrown around interchangeably, and they really should not be. People may say, oh, Jamey Meyer, he's been my certifier for the last 3 years, and that's not true. I'm an inspector, and the certifier is the actual company as a whole. So when we say OSP, that refers to your organic system plan. This is the paperwork that you submit to the certifier, and it's updated on an annual basis. I'll give some examples about different paperwork requirements of the OSP to come. The regulations are the federal organic regulations, which Olga had referred to, and it is found in CFR 205. The inspection report is written by the inspector and submitted to the certifier. Exit interview, this is a document that is filled out by the inspector concluding the inspection, and it's a time that the inspector can summarize any concerns that he or she has. It's also a time that the inspector can finalize acre totals and crops that are grown. And the certificate is the formal document issued only if you meet the requirements of certification. And you need this certificate before you can make any organic claim on products or obviously sell your crop as organic. So what is the National Organic Program? Again, it's housed under the USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service, and they developed the rules and regulations, came into effect in 2002. And IDALS is an acronym that stands for the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. And we are an accredited certifier. So we work under the USDA's NOP, and I guess they verify and audit us. So here's a little bit about our program. We were established in 2002, the same year that the federal regulations came into effect. We currently certify about 350 operations across the state of Iowa and a few outside in neighboring states. Our staff is composed of 2 full-time file reviewers, 1 file reviewer and inspector, 1 program manager, and then we also utilize about 12 contract inspectors each year to cover those 350 operations. There's a lot of travel time that takes place. The operations are, spread out across the state. Some have several thousand acres, so it just takes a lot of people to get the work done, and we could not do it without our contract inspectors. And we are one of about 14 certifiers that operate here in the state of Iowa. We are the only state agency, and the other groups that operate here are what we classify as private certifiers. Here's a list of just some of the other ones that will operate in the state of Iowa. So CCOF, they are out in California. The third one down the list, Global Organic Alliance, they are in Ohio. Oregon Tilth is all the way out in Oregon. So although these companies are not based in Iowa, they will certify your farm operation here if you choose to work with them. So some of the benefits about organic agriculture is reduced pesticide residues in the food and water. Organic farmers obviously aren't using herbicides or the treated seeds on their ground, so there's less of a chance that they would enter our food and water supply. Reduced nutrient pollution, improved soil tilth, soil organic matter and productivity, and lower energy use, carbon sequestration, and enhanced biodiversity. Organic farmers grow a wide variety of crops, including sod crops, row crops, cover crops. They grow more than just 1 or 2 crops like a lot of conventional people do. And the enhanced biodiversity is a big aspect. The NOP has really cracked down on that in recent years. They want organic farms to be more diverse, and they are requiring farmers to do something for biodiversity. So examples of how you would increase biodiversity on your farm could be leaving crop residues in the field, planting trees, allowing cover crops to flower, making bird houses, all sorts of things. And this is something that our inspectors verify while they're out on the farms. So the benefit to the organic producer, aside from the environmental benefits, is they generally get more for producing their crop. Apples have about a 30% premium over conventional prices, grapes nearly a 20% premium, and watermelons over a 60% premium. Iowa grows a lot of corn and soybeans, and Olga had some good slides on this as well, but generally organic corn and soybeans are worth more than conventional corn and soybeans. And this is all factored into the time organic farmers spend producing these crops. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and effort to plant and cultivate and plan ahead, how they're going to manage weeds and different pests. There's also different certification costs involved. So organic farmers are compensated for that extra work. So who must be certified? Except for operations exempt or excluded in the regulations, anybody that produces or handles crops, livestock products, and other agricultural products that are intended to be sold. And we'll get into the exemptions and exclusions in a moment, but basically, if you're growing or handling an organic crop, you have to be certified. So if you're a farmer that that grows the crop, obviously you have to be certified. If you handle it in any way, you have to be certified. So if you're cleaning grain for organic producers, you'd have to be certified. If you're slicing apples or tomatoes or carrots or something like that at a processing facility, you'd have to be certified to do that. And then anybody making the organic claim at the end sale. So exemptions and exclusions, these are people that gross $5,000 or less. If you have a a small backyard operation and your annual sales are not more than $5,000, you are exempt from certifying. Also, handling operations of products containing less than 70% organic ingredients, and handling operations that do not process or repackage the product. An example of this would be like a seed dealer, somebody that is taking sealed bags of seed corn and selling them to the consumer. As long as they're just the middleman and they're not physically opening the bags, they are exempt from certification. These people must comply with the organic standards, and they do not require an annual organic inspection. It's also important to know that crop from an exempt producer cannot be used in processed products. So if you gross less than $5,000 and you grow a crop such as strawberries, your strawberries could not be used for a processor that's making organic jam because you are exempt. So the application for organic certification, this is also referred to as the Organic System Plan. And what it is, it's a packet that it's basically the blueprint of your farm. It tells us what you're doing and how you're doing it. So there's different sections that reflect different points of your farm. We're going to ask, obviously, the address, where it is, how do we get there, and then some harder questions like what seeds do you use, what inputs do you use. You'll have to provide your field maps, your field history information, your storage locations, what equipment do you use. Basically anything we can think that's relevant to ask you is in this plan. And then the organic system plan must be updated annually. So our application deadline is coming up. It's March 15th and then April 15th for the final deadline. And people have to reapply every year to stay in good standing. So in addition to the organic system plan, here's some other records that we require people to keep. Input level labels, invoices for seeds, non-GMO statements if non-organic seeds are used, equipment cleanout logs, your sales records, field activity logs. That's basically just what you're doing. People have to keep track of things like planting dates, tillage dates, and harvest dates. Soil and water tests are a good one. And then you are required to maintain your records for a minimum of 5 years. Certifiers are required to keep theirs for a minimum of 10. So land requirements for organic certification, this is a big one. There is a 36-month or 3-year transition period from the date of the last prohibited substance. So you may be asking, what is a prohibited substance? And it's basically anything that's not allowed in organic. Oftentimes that is a herbicide application, although it could vary. So we ask, when you apply for certification, the certifier is going to ask, what is the date of your last prohibited substance for each field? It could be a synthetic fertilizer, such as urea or NH3 anhydrous ammonia. It could be a treated seed, some sort of spray event. And you would have to have the previous operator sign and disclose that last date. Occasionally land may be eligible right away if a field came out of the CRP program, or in certain cases, there might be a hay field that had been in hay for more than 3 years and no prohibited substances were used. So in our example here, we have a scenario. The last prohibited substance was applied June 1st, 2019. In this example, you could harvest an organic crop from this field after June 1st of 2022. Oftentimes if the dates fall like they do, you could get away with 2 transitional years. So 2020 or 2019, your crop would be considered conventional. 2020 would be transition. 2021 would be transition 2. And then in 2022, if you're growing a crop like corn or soybeans, you would actually plant your organic crop before that June 1st date or after, and it is eligible to be harvested after June 1st of 2022. So we look for 3 years past the date of the last prohibited input. So organic fields need buffer zones. The NOP does not set specific buffer requirements. So our inspectors aren't out there with a tape measure. There's no standard to go by. Your buffer just needs to keep out prohibited substances. Now, generally, that's a distance of about 30 feet, but buffers are going to vary. Sometimes you'll need well more than that 30 feet. We also look for what's in between your buffer. Obviously, a row of trees is going to help stop prohibited materials from coming in. Here in the picture, we've got a fence with a grass buffer, and your buffer area should be something that's easily identifiable. So chemical drift, it's an unfortunate thing, but it does happen a lot here in Iowa and all across the United States, I'm sure. As Olga shared the data before, there's a lot of conventional agriculture in the US and a lot of farmers that spray their crops. If you do experience drift, you need to report it to your certifier immediately, and you should also file a complaint with the Iowa Pesticide Bureau. We may come out and take residue testing. We'll take photos and make our best observation whether or not drift occurred. And if we do determine that you experienced drift, we would likely take a portion of that field out for just that year. We used to take it out for 3 years. We got some guidance from the NOP that really it's just the area that was affected that year will be out. So one of the things I do when I respond to a drift call is try to figure out how far it did enter your field, if any. We don't like to take out the whole field if we don't have to, but oftentimes chemical drift doesn't happen in a straight line. So we have to do quite a bit of measuring and flagging to see how much we are going to take out. There's certain safeguards that you should do to protect yourself from drift. The Iowa Sensitive Crops Registry is a great resource. You can get on there and enter your organic acres, and it's a nice interactive tool that you just plug in where your organic fields are, and then any chemical applicator that's nearby that's going to be doing spraying would hopefully log into the database before he or she sprays and see where your fields are. You can also provide notification to neighbors and highway departments, and it's just a good idea to notify people that you are organic. So you must select cultivation and crop practices that maintain or improve soil conditions. This is outlined in 205 and 203 of the regulation. This is also the main regulation why we don't certify hydroponics, because there's no soil. One of the ways that we would determine if you are maintaining or improving soil condition is through soil testing. We may also look at some yield data, and hopefully over the years we see your organic yields increasing, but at a minimum staying the same. Sewage sludge is prohibited. That's human waste. Synthetic fertilizers are prohibited. Animal manure is generally allowed on organic crops as long as there's nothing prohibited added to it. And if you're applying raw manure to vegetable crops, the 190 to 120 day rule is in effect. And what that means is you can't apply the manure within 90 days of harvest from a crop that touches the soil. So that would be a crop like potatoes that are grown in the soil. And the 120 day rule would be in effect for crops that grow above the ground. So seeds and planting stock, the producer is required to use organic seeds. So organic seeds and annual seedlings must be used, except you can plant an untreated non-GMO variety if organic varieties are not available. This is a tricky part of the regulation, and I come across a lot of producers that have the mindset of, well, I can use organic seeds or untreated non-GMO seeds. And that's not really how the regulation reads. It says you must use organic seeds first. So that would mean you have to try your hardest to locate organic varieties. Now, if you can't find organic varieties, then you can use untreated non-GMO seeds, but you have to demonstrate your search. And we require that producers contact a minimum of 3 places. And they basically have to prove that they put effort in to find organic varieties. So harvesting the crop, you've really got 2 options. If you have a split operation, you can have dedicated harvest equipment for your organic crops and your conventional crops, or you can do cleanouts in between. We also like to see dedicated storage units. So in this case, I think they're picking aronia berries, and we'd like to see dedicated totes and bins. If you're on the grain side, we'd like dedicated grain bins, and we'd like to see those numbered as well, so that there's no risk of commingling. And commingling is a term that basically means mixing up your organic crop with non-organic crop. And once an organic crop is commingled, there's really no going back. We have no choice but to take it out. Crop rotation requirements. Your crop rotation must include but not be limited to sod crops, cover crops, and green manure crops that provide the following 4 functions. Like we mentioned before, organic rotations are very, very diverse. They generally include a good legume or sod crop in there. A really common organic rotation is corn, soybeans, and then that 3rd year, they'll grow oats, alfalfa, or barley alfalfa, or oats and clover, something that breaks up your annual cycle. A common conventional crop rotation is corn, soybeans every year. That's not a really good organic rotation, and it really doesn't fit the regulation, and we don't allow it. So this is how the ways that organic producers can deal with pests and weeds: mowing, livestock grazing, hand weeding and mechanical cultivation, flame, heat, or electrical means, and you cannot use synthetic herbicides. So the picture there on the bottom right is actually a flame weeder. So the farmer is pulling it behind his tractor. It's like a large LP tank that is shooting flame, and the idea there is to kill the weeds, but not the crop. Here's some more specialty equipment. The upper left is just your standard 6-row cultivator because it's taking 6 rows at a time. The picture below that is a weed zapper. That would be used on a crop like soybeans, where maybe your weeds have overgrown the crop, and you would fold out the wings on that zapper and you would electrocute the weeds, leaving them to a slow death, and then your organic crop like the soybeans would power through it. The upper right picture is a roller crimper strategy. That's what we would refer to as a no-till system. So the farmer's not tilling the ground. He's making one pass with that roller crimper, and that's a heavy roller with jagged teeth, and it is crimping that rye down, and then he's planting soybeans right behind it. So if you see in the bottom right picture, it worked really well in this case. And there's a nice mat of dead carbon material, and the crop is growing between it. You can also use mulch such as hay, straw, and grass clippings. Row covers are very commonly used for the vegetable operations, and they must be removed at the end of the growing season. So how do you know what inputs you can use? This is a tough one because the National Organic Program does not tell farmers or certifiers what inputs are allowed. It's really to the discretion of the certifier. Now the regulations say that synthetic substances are allowed unless they are listed, or synthetic substances are prohibited unless they are allowed on the national list of 205601, and non-synthetic substances are allowed unless prohibited on the list. So again, you must get approval from the certifier, and this would require you to submit a label with a full list of ingredients. And I have that underlined because we spend a lot of time just requesting the right information. Companies are reluctant to disclose this oftentimes because they don't want their patents or their product being stolen, I guess. But if we don't have a full list of ingredients, we're not going to review the product. We just can't. We have a materials review team, which is basically just our staff, and we try to meet usually once weekly, and we make product determinations together, whether or not we allow or prohibited products. And we've currently got about 4,000 products in our database and counting that we have reviewed for our farmers. We accept OMRI, Washington State Department of Agriculture, PCO, and California listed products. We don't take reviews from any other certifiers. So if you work with Iowa and your neighbor, down the road works with another certifier like MOSA, if MOSA allows a certain product, don't assume that we will. You still have to submit a label and take it through our process. So the farm operation, everybody gets inspected at least annually, and your inspection is going to take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours on site, and unannounced inspections and sampling may also occur. So at the farm inspection, the inspector is going to view your fields and buffer areas. He's also going to view your equipment, your storage areas, and then he's going to audit your records. Certain records that we may audit would be, did you purchase enough seeds to plant the acres that you've requested? Did you buy enough fertilizer? Did you keep track of your field activities? And sales records is another big one that we audit. So the role of the inspector, your inspector is there to conduct an inspection. He or she is going to look at your fields, look at your paperwork, look for areas that maybe you're not following your organic system plan. Organic inspectors should not consult. We can't help you in any way. We can't make input decisions or help you sell your crop, and inspectors can't do any business with you for at least 12 months. There is a fine line between inspecting and consulting. We have had inspectors before that are kind of crossing that line, and that's really not a good thing. So concluding the inspection will do what's called an exit interview, and that's the inspector's time to communicate any concerns with the producer. And they're also going to outline the crops grown and the acre totals. So at this point, the inspector is going to go home and write their report and submit the report to the certification agency. So like when I turn in reports to IDALS, after I click send, I'm kind of done. I mean, I'm left out of the certification decision. That's up to the rest of the IDALS staff and the file reviewer and the program manager. So after a certification decision is made, your certificate will be issued, and you need this certificate to make any sort of organic claim. So here's the process kind of in a snapshot form. You send in your paperwork and you get a pre-inspection review of your file. If you pass that, you get an inspection, and then a post-inspection review, and then the certification decision. So fees, now the fees are going to change from certifier to certifier. We have 3 main fees. So your application fee is due when you turn in your paperwork. The inspection fee for crop only is $350. And then the certification fee is going to vary by the crops and the number of acres that you grow. So we've just got a little bit of time left, so I'll roll through some of these remaining slides. So everybody is subject to sampling. We are required to sample a minimum of 5% of the operations that we certify. Sampling can be scheduled or unscheduled. The main thing is the producer has to be there to physically watch me take the sample, and then there's some paperwork involved where we maintain the chain of custody. The samples are sealed and shipped off to a lab. We utilize a laboratory all the way out in Sherwood, Oregon. Unannounced inspections may also occur. Sometimes these are combined with the sampling, sometimes they're not. They can be random or cause-based, and these can happen in addition to your scheduled annual inspection. Operations are notified 4 hours or less prior to arrival, and this could include a full or partial inspection. And again, the farmer has to be there. Oftentimes, I'll just pick out 2 or 3 fields ahead of time and call the farmer and say, take me to these fields. And it's a challenge to do these because organic farmers are busy. They're usually out there farming, or they might have side jobs. So it has been a challenge through the years to to catch people for these. And that is all I have. I'll open it up now for questions if we have any.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamey. This was really helpful. There is a question from Kim, and you can stop sharing your screen if you want. The question from Kim is, does IDALS certify CAFOs?
Could you be more specific what you refer to as a
Yeah, so
CAFO?
CAFO is confined animal.
So there's no space requirements for organic certification. I mean, I don't know when you refer to CAFO if it's like, what makes it a CAFO? Is it building size? Is it number of animals? We certify a lot of livestock operations, some of them large scale. I see Kim saying no outside access. No, we do not certify anybody without outside access. Outdoor access is a federal requirement of the reg, that those animals have to go outdoors.
Yeah, so CAFO stands for confined animal feeding operation, just for those who don't know.
Okay.
Mike says, any special considerations for organic hemp?
Hemp, it's a new thing. We've had some interest here in the past year or so. I don't really know where the hemp industry is headed, but we've definitely had some folks interested in doing it.
Does IDALS certify organic meat?
Yes, yep, absolutely. We've got, I want to say 40 or 50 livestock producers in the state.
Yeah. Are there any more questions for Jamey? If not, you guys, we will take our 15-minute break right now, and we will return at 1:32. So go ahead, stretch out, get a snack, grab some water, and then come back at 1:32. We'll be here. But Jamey, thank you so much for your presentation today. This was really very insightful and very helpful. And thank you for your time and for being here today.
Thanks, Olga.
So yeah, guys, if you want to take a here, we'll meet at 1:32.
can't hear.
Oh, Sharon, we are actually on a quick break. We have 2 more minutes until.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So folks will come over here in a couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm so late. I had a doctor's appointment.
Oh, that's no worries. That's totally fine. Once we are done with this, I will upload the recording of the workshop to our YouTube channel. So you can always review the beginning of the workshop on our YouTube channel.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and the neat thing too is the 3 other workshops that we hosted, we actually already, I have uploaded them to our YouTube channel too, and I separated them into chapters. So you can actually, skip through certain sections if you don't want to watch them and just skip to exactly the section that you want to see.
Okay, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
My camera does not work. So I can see you, but I don't think you can see me.
No, can't see you, but and that's okay. No worries.
Okay.
It's fine. Mm-hmm.
Because I do other Zooms and they keep saying, where are you?
Yeah. I know. And this is probably the year to invest in a camera.
Yes, I think so. So how many people are there today?
So we have about 28 people on the call
good.
right now. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And it's actually 1:32. So Megan Thomas with Mercaris is our next speaker. And then after Megan, we will have our farmer panel. So Megan, if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Olga. Hi, everyone. Just going to share my screen here. Okay. All right, everyone. As Olga mentioned, my name is Megan Thomas, and I am coming to you on behalf of Mercaris to talk about organic agronomics and market trends. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mercaris, we are a market data service and trading platform for organic, non-GMO, and other identity preserved commodities. We also produce some data analytics for organic markets. Here's some examples of those data reports. So we produce organic and non-GMO price reporting, spot and forward for food and feed grade, and we cover the US and Canada. We also produce some supply and demand analyses, some organic import tracking, also inorganic acreage tracking, an interactive tool that's fairly new to our website now. And we also have an organic and non-GMO facilities mapping tool where you can go in and see how far away you are from certain organic and non-GMO facilities, and you can specify what types of crops that you're looking for. Also an organic farm heat map and organic grain swaps contracts. So we offer quite a few products and services. Many people know us by the Mercaris Market Survey. So our survey is the most comprehensive and largest organic and non-GMO data set available. And we include only verified contracts. And we have about over 50 first handlers and trading firms who participate. We keep their identities confidential. We don't release that information. And the crops that we cover in our survey are organic and non-GMO corn, soybeans, also soybean meal, all of the major wheat classes, and also some small grains and some pulses and organic beans that we're steadily adding more data for. We also have a few products for farmers. So farmers can sign up for a free account and they can receive the Organic Producers Report. And I have an example of that report right up here on your screen. And this report is sent out on a bi-weekly basis and shows some organic food and feed grade pricing every couple of weeks for corn, soybeans, and wheat. We also offer, our customers to the opportunity to reach new buyers at competitive prices. So that's another service that that we offer that you can come to us for. So that was just a short overview of what we at Mercaris, what we do. And now I'll get into a organic market overview. So I'll start off by talking about U.S. organic feed and corn and soybean feed prices. So the 1920 marketing year was pretty challenging for corn markets. We saw corn prices fall about $2.50 a bushel from September 2019 through September of 2020. But since the start of the 2020 harvest, we have seen corn prices begin to stabilize. So overall, the Mercaris market price survey, our reported organic feed grade corn averaged about $6.98 a bushel over December of 2020. So this was about a 40-cent per bushel gain from the end of the 1920 marketing year. Taking a look at soybeans, soybean prices held up pretty well. Soybeans gained about 64 cents a bushel over the marketing year, and average price was about 1966, which falls within the 19 to 20 bushel range. That's typical for organic soybeans. So taking a look at the organic supply balance here, we have organic corn imports and production on the left side in yellow. And then we have organic soybean imports and production on the right side in green. So taking a look at corn, if we look at 2015 to 2016 marketing year, we see that we were importing about half of our organic corn supplies compared to the 1920 marketing year. We were importing about 30% of our organic corn supplies. So we see sort of a smaller reliance on imports for corn. So we were able to increase our production of corn over the last 5 marketing years or so. We see a different story for soybeans. So if we take a look at 2015-16 marketing year, we were importing 86% of our soybean supplies, compared with 77% of supplies that we were importing in the 1920 marketing year. So we're still heavily reliant on imports for organic soybeans, haven't been able to sort of increase domestic soybean production, mainly because of, agronomically, it's not as beneficial to produce organic soybeans. So we import the rest to fill our demand for feed beans. So you might be wondering, where are all these corn and soybean imports going? And that is to supply the organic livestock with feed, as I'm sure you know. So if we take a look at this table here, we see that the largest year-over-year growth actually came from turkeys over the 2021 marketing year. So if we look towards the bottom of this graph here, we see that our turkey livestock inventories grew 39% compared to the previous marketing year. So we're seeing a huge growth in daily turkey production. Following turkey, we see huge increases in pig crops. So we see here our pig crop increased by about 27% compared to the previous year. Broilers also continue to steadily grow. We see it typically will fluctuate, but sort of a smaller growth in broilers, about a 2% growth in organic broilers for meat production. And egg layers are also, we continually see them to grow every year. Let's see here. So taking a look at the organic corn supply outlook, we have about 3.1 million more bushels of organic corn over the 2021 marketing year. So we're seeing 9% more organic corn production. And because of this increase in production, we're seeing less of a reliance on imports. So we're seeing about 3% lower organic corn imports. I'll give you some time here if you want to take a look at the table here. As I mentioned, 2% growth in area harvested, also 2% growth in silage production, 9% growth in corn grain production. Okay. So taking a look at organic corn imports, this actually includes whole and cracked corn imports. And this table says marketing year to date. This is actually through December of 2020. So we've actually seen organic whole and cracked corn imports exceed year-ago levels in December. And this was the first time that has happened since August. So December's whole and cracked corn imports were up about 35% compared to the previous year. And we saw, these gains mostly came from increases from Argentina. And then if we take a look at maritime imports by vessel of organic cracked corn, we also saw a boost in December, up 70% from the previous month. But even though we saw an increase in organic corn imports, our imports do lag behind the previous year. So we're expecting organic corn imports to remain generally lower through the remainder of this marketing year. So if we take a look at organic corn prices, the January 2021 organic feed grade corn price, according to Mercaris' market survey, came in at $7.69 a bushel. And so this was a $1.23 bushel compared to the previous year. And I sort of just included December's average on here, $6.87 a bushel, just to show you how organic corn prices are gaining a bit more momentum than we've seen them over the past several months. And so the January 2021 organic premium came in at about $2.22 a bushel. And this is, almost $3 lower than the organic corn premium of the previous year. So we're seeing a slightly lower premium, but as I mentioned, we are seeing organic corn prices gain more momentum since about December of 2020. All right, so taking a look at organic soybean production, we had a really great 2020 harvest, soybean harvest. We had about 3% more harvested acres, 9% higher yields. So we had about nearly 1 million more bushels added to US production. So this was about a 12% increase from the previous year. And then just taking a look at the table here, we have about 3% more area harvested. We also see an increase in yields, as I mentioned, 12% increase in production. And we're also seeing increases in both whole bean imports and also soybean meal imports, which I will get into in the next slide. So looking at organic whole bean imports, organic whole bean imports remained sluggish in December of 2020, down from the previous year. And we've seen imports reduced from all sources, with imports in particular down from Russia and Argentina about 63% compared to the previous year. So overall, we're seeing organic whole bean imports are down about 23% compared to the previous year when we look specifically at the first 4 months of the 2020-21 marketing year. And as I mentioned, this data is through December of 2020. Taking a look at soybean meal imports. So meal imports sort of have a different story. We've seen increased meal imports in December, more than double the level of imports reached in over December of 2019. So we've seen some phenomenal organic soybean meal imports. Also, December 2020 marked the 4th consecutive month in which soybean meal imports more than doubled the previous year's levels. So overall, we're seeing organic soybean meal imports reach nearly 113,000 metric tons over the first 3 months of the marketing year, which is a 122% growth compared to the previous year. So looking at soybean prices, the January organic feed grade price was about $20 a bushel, gaining about 30 cents a bushel from the previous year. So soybean prices are very stable. The January premium was also phenomenal, up almost $5 a bushel from the previous year. So the thing to keep an eye on for soybeans will just be what the harvest will be, looking like later on. All right, taking a look at wheat production here. Wheat production was also very positive, similar to soybeans. So we saw higher harvested area across the board, especially by expansions across the high plain area. We saw winter wheat production up 4%. Also other spring wheat production, 9% gains year over year, followed by durum production up 23%. So overall, organic wheat production looked great. Like I said, similar to soybeans, very positive outlook for production for wheat. And next, we'll look at wheat prices. So this graph here actually shows wheat prices through Q3 of 2020. So over the last quarter of 2020, and into the first quarter of this year, we saw the average feed grade wheat price at about $8.26 a bushel, and food grade ranged at about $11.60. And wheat prices tend to trend with organic feed grade corn. Okay, so some of the things that we'll be keeping our eye on for the remainder of this marketing year and beyond is actually a few different things. But overall, the fall harvest ended quietly. We didn't see any shocks to the US supply outlook. So any price volatility that we see will likely come from changes in either trade or demand. So we have a few different things going on. We have a fairly new administration. We have, our ongoing COVID response. So we could see consumer demand could change quickly. Incomes could also change pretty quickly. Probably the most important thing that Mercaris will be keeping our eye on is any potential disruption to Indian imports, particularly in the organic soybean market. And just to give you some background, India is actually going through the process of recertification through the National Organic Program. And so we could possibly see some disruption to soybean imports later in the summer after that deadline passes, depending on what happens. But just to give you some more background, the US accounted for about half of India's exported products in 2019. And in the 1920 marketing year, we imported about 42% of our organic soybean supplies from India. So this will likely be very important for us to keep watch on, because this could really impact trade and impact prices going forward. So I want to thank you for your time and attention over these past few minutes. And here's my contact information if you'd like to get in touch, if you have any questions. But other than that, I will open up the floor for any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Very interesting presentation. Thank you for that. So basically, the main concern with the Indian soybean imports is, basically the risk of not getting those imports this year, which then will result in higher prices of organic soybeans overall, right? Would that be a correct assumption?
Yes. Usually we would, if we couldn't import from India, the next thing is to look for another supplier. So we could probably find another supplier, but maybe not one that would replace all of the imports that we were getting from India. But if we do see a gap in that, we could start to see some impacts on prices.
Yeah. Kim has a question. She says, what drove the increase in turkeys?
Yeah, so we actually pull our turkey data from USDA AMS. So they actually send out a report every Monday, sort of reporting on broilers and turkey production and egg layers. And once I noticed, those numbers sort of dramatically increasing, I did sort of reach out just to get some information on what could have been causing this increase. One of the things that was mentioned was slaughtering whole birds, and just some changes in actual in the reporting methods that they were using. to get that data in. So unfortunately, I can't provide, I guess, just a straightforward answer to that, because we actually don't have a survey or anything for getting these turkey numbers in. We actually rely on USDA's data and their methodology. So if there's any changes in their methodology, then we'll see changes in turkey production. And then naturally, I see another comment coming in, and naturally we do see fluctuations in production around the holidays and different times of the year. So Thanksgiving, of course, Thanksgiving, Christmas, also things like Easter, the beginning of summer, you can see increases. So it's definitely seasonal changes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's just more demand for organic turkeys as far as like from consumers standpoint, and if more and more stores are simply looking to get more organic turkeys as an option for Thanksgiving. So
Mhm. Yeah.
are there any other questions for Megan, you guys? Well, if there are no final questions, Megan, thank you so much for your presentation and for being here today. And we really appreciate your time. And, you know, her contact information was provided. Feel free to reach out to Megan if you have additional questions for her later on. Awesome. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you guys, we can move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the organic farmer panel. And Kim Andersen will be the first presenter, and I actually will be the one to share Kim's presentation. So let me get situated here. All right, are you guys able to see the presentation? Kim, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, you can go right ahead if you want.
Okay, well, I'm mainly going to address why organic. I think that's a pretty common question that organic farmers get. And I feel like some of this is going to definitely repeat and tie into what I heard you say, Olga and Jamey. And so hopefully it'll be from the farmer perspective. I really appreciate Elliot Coleman, so I wanted to include his quote to start. Organic farming appealed to me because it involved searching for and discovering nature's pathways as opposed to the formulaic approach of chemical farming. The appeal of organic farming is boundless. This mountain has no top, this river has no end. So I like his quote for many reasons, but one is we have some hills on our farm that as a kid we called mountains, although now I know that they are just big hills. And I do live on a river bottom. So you can go ahead and switch it. So it really boils down to these three things for me. The choices about farming organically, eating organically, all fall into these three categories: health, the environment, and family. This picture is me at my 5-year cancer celebration. I'll be 5 years of being cancer free after going through treatment for my second cancer. And I was on the Stand Up to Cancer, it's kind of like a telethon or a, anyway, they asked me to dress up and hold a sign about something that had changed in my life. And so after having cancer twice, I did become an organic farmer. It also has to do, oh, stay there for a minute. It has to do with livelihood. I've been a teacher most of my life, and the last 7 years I've taught online. But I was looking for balance because I don't know about all of you, but I don't like to just sit at my computer all the time staring at a screen. It's nice to get outside. I live here on the farm, so I was looking for ways to be active outside besides gardening and flowers. So I was wanting that balance. And I think it's important for me to say that prior to being farming organically, we weren't farming at all. So we didn't have to switch from conventional. The other thing I want to add is my grandfather really didn't like the chemicals, and they were becoming more and more standard in conventional farming when he decided to retire. So that was his way of getting out of maybe having to make a decision, was to basically retire. And the third thing, place. I moved to the farm in 2006 and consider this my last place. So I want to make that place as healthy as I can. And that means a lot of things for me. Okay, next. So then the environment. Once I moved here, the farm was rented out, and we walked the timber and drove around and looked at different fields. And these are some of the observations I made. This is a stock photo because I don't have a picture, but that's really similar to the dirt that I saw. I called it dead dirt. The other thing that was really interesting to me as I was studying about farming is a lot of people were pushing the no-till. And one of the big reasons they were pushing it is they were saying there's no erosion with no-till. Well, I'm here to tell you that I saw a lot of erosion with no-till on our farm. Some really horrific erosion, actually. So I don't totally buy into that for that reason, because of what I observed. We have slopes, river bottom, what I call timber fingers, a lot of small irregular shaped fields. The wild berries from when I had been a kid and came here to visit my grandparents had disappeared. There seemed to be like less birds and butterflies and bees. These are just the things I noticed when I was outside. So solutions that I started thinking about were diversity and not seeing just corn and beans everywhere. No chemicals or fewer chemicals, a living soil. I wanted to bring the berries back. And I wanted to provide food that would promote seeing things like bees and butterflies again. So I'm actually one of these people that gets really excited when I see milkweed growing in our ditch or our fence row, and there is no way I would cut that out. So I like those monarch butterflies. Next. So it just kept leading me to more questions. As a teacher, I've always been a researcher, and I kept asking, what do they mean by sustainable, and what's affordable? What can I live with and sleep at night? And what do we have to start with? And what we did have to start with was the land, which we have always lovingly just called the farm. So I started to think about what are our farm goals? And the answers that really presented themselves were to, it kept leading back to organic, and having a crop rotation that was diverse. We didn't have anything but like one old tractor of my grandfather's and a small one that we had purchased. So affordable older equipment was part of the equation. We started answering ads and going to auctions, purchasing tractors, combine, rotary hoe, cultivator, plow, soil finisher, cultimulture, wagons, hay racks. We don't have all the equipment to do the haying when we grow alfalfa, but we hire a young neighbor who does most of that mowing, raking, and baling. We get in on helping with the small squares. Another answer that came to me is having more perennial crops on smaller fields and areas that are not suitable to row cultivation. And so what you see in the pictures here is an orchard that we planted in 2014. On the right is a chestnut tree kind of at the top of the hill. So we have chestnut and hazelnut. So that's my granddaughter on the four-wheeler helping this last fall with the hazelnut harvest. And that's what you see in the red bag. Our hazelnuts were all sold to mostly one individual in Chicago this year. Then we also have pawpaw and persimmon in this orchard. So 2 types of fruits, 2 types of nuts. Okay, next. We do grow corn. So the picture on the left here is our newest tractor, which Nelson, who's going to present next, went and picked up for me, that we bought from a retiring organic farmer in Wisconsin. And so that was my husband planting our corn in 2020 around the first part of June. So we do grow corn, soybeans, oats, and alfalfa. We've also done peas and pumpkins. And Nelson will probably show pictures of pumpkins, and if that was available, we would do that again in a heartbeat. And then the picture on the right is our 2020 corn this year. My husband and my youngest grandson, Asher. Next. I want to point out too that we both work off-farm jobs, so the farming doesn't sustain us. It's an additional income. And I remember when I first went to conferences, I was like, are these people living on this? So the answer for us is not quite. So we have expanded, and I have a seed business. And in 2017, we also planted 5.5 acres of blueberries. We have 8 varieties of high bush blueberries that all came out of Michigan. These pictures detect, well, a little bit of our challenges this year. The reason I'm showing row 96 in this picture on the left is that is the Patriot variety, and those were in full bloom. I can't even express how many flowers there were on each of these shrubs. When we got a hailstorm in May that knocked all the blossoms off this variety, just a timing thing, as weather always is. So we really had no crop in these 8 rows of Patriots this year. On the right are Dukes, which are one of our earliest varieties. They seem to be at a different stage, although both these varieties are considered early and were not as affected. They had a little bit of frost damage, but weren't as affected by the hail. And as you can see, they have really large berries. And then at the bottom, I show a picture of, just one of our blueberries. We picked varieties that all are rated large to extra large because our customers are primarily U-pick, and we want them to be able to fill their bucket quickly. Next. So this enterprise we lovingly named Blueberry Bottom, which came to me in a dream. And 2020 was our second season of Blueberry Bottom Farm. I have a picture in the top of a group of Amish people that had come down from Kalona for the day to pick blueberries. And then these other 2 pictures, one on the left is a modified cattle feeding wagon that we use to put mulch in the row. We use hardwood chips that break down and provide some acid. And I'm showing this to show that there's a lot of work outside of the season, including weeding, mostly weeding, fertilizing, mulching, and mowing. And then in the winter, we have pruning. And so I hope Jamey's still on here because in this picture of the snow and the little blueberry shed, I hope you can see up there on the windmill stand that there's a new cedar box that my husband built as we're trying to attract a kestrel to the field. And this would be part of biological control for voles. We're getting increased vole population in this field, and they're pretty hard on blueberries in that they dig right and at the base of the plant and eat the roots, which the plants can handle a little bit of root pruning, but they aren't going to be able to handle too much root pruning. So blueberries are a perennial shrub and can live 50 years or more. And one of the coolest things, someone told me I was going to have to buy bees, and I'm not going to say that I might never have to do that, but so far the native bumblebees have showed up in droves to pollinate these blueberries. So that's been very cool. Next. The other reason that we're organic and why we're doing what we're doing is because of family. I'd be considered the 5th generation to farm, with my great-great-grandfather coming here from Switzerland. I guess he thought these hills in southeast Iowa resembled, not really, the mountains in Switzerland, and he came to be a dairy farmer. Animals don't make a lot of sense for us because we still have these other jobs, and we don't feel like one person can be full-time dedicated to provide the kind of animal husbandry that we would like to see. So we don't have animals, but we do have legacy. We have 2 grown sons and 6 grandchildren. This picture from September of 2019, and 2 more coming in 2021. Our 2 youngest grandsons in this picture are obsessed with tractors, and we love to have them come to the farm because they just talk all things tractors. Next. So in the picture on the left, in our new tractor again, my husband got asked to replant a cornfield for an Amish neighbor. And so I don't know if you can really see it in there, but little Levi, age 3, is in that tractor. He went down to help Pa plant this 9 acres of corn for a neighbor, and we could not get him out of the tractor. The other kids and I went along thinking he'd do a round and then, we'd retrieve him. But no, he was in for the long haul, and he wanted to finish the field with his pa. So it was really sweet. These 3 grandkids all helped with the hazelnut harvest this year. They love picking the blueberries, but mostly they love eating those. And the picture on the right is just to show that they like to have lots of fun at the farm too, and so do we. They have this little kid 4-wheeler that they got passed down to them from one of my nephews. We have a playhouse converted from an old chicken coop. They like to ride in the timber, help in the garden. And our hope is that one day, one of them might want to own and operate the farm. And if not, we are looking to provide, I guess, some guidance to our family, that we'd really be honored if no family wanted to do it, that we could find a non-family farm entrepreneur that wants to continue growing organic crops on this farm well into the future. And that's all I've got.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing your story and your journey. I loved seeing all your grandkids. They're all just super adorable.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm not seeing any questions right off the top. I can't believe how big your blueberries are. They were as big as that quarter, right?
Right. And the plants too are pretty amazing. Some of them were like literally like a 12-inch twig. one stem that we put in 2017. And one of the varieties, the blue crop, is already as tall as I am. So it's just crazy how they've grown. We do have irrigation out there. Blueberries demand a lot of water, but they also require well-drained soil. So they're a challenge in that way to grow, but very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. We've had a conversation before, and you mentioned that your organic soil matter has increased tremendously over the years since you've been practicing organic. Do you mind sharing the growth of how that happened, where you were at the beginning and where you are, these days?
Well, especially in the blueberry field, which it's really impressive in a perennial crop when you stop disturbing the soil.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that really contributes is that mulch in the row. And at the time of planting, we used a lot of Canadian peat moss, to actually mix with our soil. So I was looking for my actual have some soil pests, but that's the wrong one that I'm looking at. I want to say, most organic matter, at least on this farm and starting out, was like around 2, probably.
Mhm.
And I think the last results I got in the blueberry field, I don't want to misquote it, but I think it was as high as 20.
20%.
Yeah,
organic
which is just
soil matter.
crazy.
Mhm.
But those tests were taken in the row, where it's been heavily mulched, and where within probably a foot of the plant. So there would have been some peat moss involved in that too.
Mhm.
But it was consistently high across the field in all the samples. We were mainly testing for pH because we hadn't done that, even though we had done things to amend the soil pH. And that was mostly done with organic elemental sulfur.
Mhm.
And that's a slower process. So we put that on 1 year prior to planting, but the recommendation is actually put it on 2 years prior to planting,
Mhm.
because it does take time. So.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. The amount of growth in organic soil matter that you have been able to experience yourself by, farming on this plot of land. And you've also mentioned when we talked before the amount of like new bird species and new insects and all these things that weren't present when you were at the farm at the beginning. So it's just wonderful to see, and thank you for sharing that.
And when I was a kid, there was always wild black raspberries and wild blackberries. And my grandpa would go out early in the day to pick, and he'd come back, with an ice cream pail or 2 of these berries. And I thought, oh, this is just so amazing. And so when I moved to the farm, I was really excited about that. I was going to be able to go out to the timber and pick, and I wasn't finding these berries. And so I was super disappointed. But when we moved here, we had to put in some buffer strips, when the farm was still rented out and being farmed by a tenant. And that was the start of things coming back, is putting in these strips where you're not farming right up to the edge of the timber. But then I think that the final kind of jump was that transition to organic, getting rid of those chemicals at all. And now there's all kinds of wild black raspberries and blackberries. And I realize how hard all of that is to pick. And I appreciate my grandpa so much more, because picking those type of berries, you're dealing with thorns, poison ivy, bugs, heat, all those things. So that's definitely hard work. And it's one of the reasons I chose blueberries, because there's no thorns. You don't have to bend over even if you don't want to as the plants get bigger. And it's really a pleasant thing to pick.
Yeah. Awesome. I see a question or maybe a statement from Ellen. She says, if I am a transitioning to organic, at one point, can you plant blueberries or trees and consider them certified by auditor? Can you plant during the transition and expect crops at the end of transition?
That's an excellent question. And I thought that I had to transition the ground first. So we started that process in 2014. And so technically my ground would have already went through transition by the time we planted in 2017. We had grown rye on it a couple of years to try and deal with weeds, as a weed suppressant. But you can actually plant, and Jamey could maybe weigh in on this too if he's still here. You can actually put in the perennial plants like a tree or a shrub during the transition time, because you're not going to be getting a crop. At least in my case, we pulled the blossoms off the first 2 years, the year of planting and then again in 2018. So we weren't actually going to have a crop, until 2019, something to sell. And with our trees, the same way, we planted trees that you weren't going to get a crop for like 5 years. So, maybe you want to weigh in on that?
I think you answered it pretty well. So if you have certified organic land already, you can get conventional planting stock. And then after 1 year, you'd be able to harvest fruit from that planting stock. And in Kim's case with the blueberries and, like apple trees, they don't usually produce fruit for more than 1 year anyways.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions for Kim. If there's any other questions that come to mind for Kim later on, feel free to add them into the chat box. Kim, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's really cool to learn more about what you do, and so thank you for being here today, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Olga.
Of course. Awesome. Well, now we'll move forward to Nelson Smith. And Nelson, you are sharing your presentation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to put your video on and then also share your screen, that would be awesome.
Well, if I can find it.
So you can always search for it in that search box at the bottom of your left-hand side on your screen. Just search for Nelson presentation, or it should be on a desktop, right?
Yes, it should be, but I don't see it. I'm not getting to the desktop here. There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're not seeing the presentation quite yet. Did you click on it?
Yep.
Okay, maybe it's just delayed a little bit. Or what I would say, is your presentation open and you can see it, Nelson?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so what I would say is stop sharing your screen and then reshare it again and click on a window that has the PowerPoint.
How's that?
That's it. Perfect. And now click on the slideshow and start from the beginning. So it's on the top there, top tab.
Oh, okay.
Yep, right there. And then down below. Yep. And then just click OK on that. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay. This is a family farm we have here. We have a corporation. I have 3 brothers that do not do any farming at all because they're in faraway places. So I do the farming here. My mother is still around. She's 93 years old now, but she doesn't do much of the farming either. So it's kind of up to me. But we have about 300 acres of row crops and about 150 acres of alfalfa. We're right along the Skunk River, which is just a upriver from where Kim is. So the water that goes by here, we send it on down to her and she can put it in her blueberries or not. We've been certified organic since 1997. And in 1997, organic crops and markets were much different than they are now. There were very few crops that you could sell as organic, and most of the ones that you could, it was a small market. So the big market at that time were organic soybeans. And most of those had to be sold for soy milk and tofu. And most of that was in Japan. So our first few years, all our soybeans went to Japan, which was about a 6,000 mile travel trip for them. So they got a ticket to go 6,000 miles. Well, now things are a lot different. There's a lot more markets. There are a lot more organic crops. And we have about a 16-mile delivery because we sell all our soybeans to Professional Proteins, which is in Washington, which is about 16 miles up the road. So in fact, they come and pick them up when they want them. We store them in the bins. And so the soybeans don't get the big trip that the other soybeans got because it's only 16 miles to the market. On our crops, the rotation, we have corn, soybeans, oats, alfalfa, and sometimes we get rye or buckwheat in there. And we have cover crops, which are usually either the buckwheat and the rye for a cover crop. But our main rotation is corn and soybeans and oats and alfalfa. And the alfalfa, sometimes we'll keep that for 2, possibly 3 years in that rotation. Just because if it's a good alfalfa crop, we've got markets for it, not as organic, but just as alfalfa hay. We've also grown pumpkins in the past, and we grew flax for a couple years. The flax was not a good thing. It didn't work well in this part of the country because we have too much rain. You need a drier area up in the Dakotas and Minnesota. So that didn't work out, but the thing we did learn is that we're not going to grow flax anymore. So it's a learning experience. And the pumpkins were a great crop. Unfortunately, we kind of grew ourselves out of the market because once we figured out how to grow pumpkins and do a good job of it, we actually grew more than the processing plant, which was in Princeville, Illinois. Seneca Foods came over here to Iowa and needed some organic farms that would grow organic pumpkins because they do pumpkins in Illinois all over them. They've done that for 30 or 40 years, but they'd never done organics. So they came over and they picked 8 farms in this area to start out. And we were one of those to start out the pumpkins. And we grew pumpkins and we learned how to grow them better each year. And then by the time we got really good at it, the warehouse was full of pumpkins because they weren't selling as fast as they thought they could sell them. So we got kind of worked ourselves out of a job. And now the pumpkins that they grow organically are much closer to the processing plant in Princeville. So we don't get to grow them anymore. This is my mother. She's standing next to a rye field. And I'll do a little name dropping here. Carol Leopold Smith, her uncle was Aldo Leopold. He's my great uncle. So we have to kind of keep up the environmental aspect to our farming to go with the previous family members that were in And then in this picture, she's 86 years old and still out and running around. This is a picture of a buckwheat field, and she's 88 in this picture. And buckwheat worked very well for us for a number of years. And then we ran into these dry years when buckwheat is a short season. It's about 75 days maturity from planting till harvest, which is short. And buckwheat's usually grown in combination with another crop. And that other crop, usually if you plant rye, you'll harvest the rye in the middle of the summer and then plant buckwheat and then harvest the buckwheat before the frost. You have to get it before the frost because it doesn't do well at all. Once frost comes on, the first frost will kill the buckwheat immediately. It's got a really hollow stem to it. It's like a straw that is hollow. And the buckwheat is very good for pollinators, the bees and the wasps, little wasps, and all the bugs will be out there. The whole field, when it's in full bloom like this, will just hum. It's like a little motor running because there's so many little critters out there that are pollinating those blossoms. It works well until you plant it a little late, which I did on the left side. This was planted after rye, but it was too dry to plant the buckwheat so it would grow. So I waited 2 weeks and then planted it. And then it came along beautifully because we got some rain. But we had an early frost, and on the right side, you'll see what happens to buckwheat. All those brown things are the blooms, and it just killed it immediately because we got a frost that was 2 weeks too early. So we didn't get a good crop there at all. This is what the seeds look like after the frost. And if you'll notice, there's the little green ones, which are the green seeds. And buckwheat is indeterminate, which means it puts on seeds from the first time when it first blossoms until it dies in the fall. It's always putting seeds on because it's always blooming. These seeds down here, the light brown, are no good. They're completely empty. The green seeds, of course, aren't mature enough. And the darker seeds, actually, it's supposed to be very close to almost black to be mature. So we didn't harvest anything out of this, but the deer and the pheasant and the quail and everybody else got to harvest a lot because they went through and just cleaned it out on this. And if there's a palm reader in the place, anybody that's a palm reader, if you want to read my palm and tell me if I'm going to win the lottery, I'll be glad to take that information too. This is another field of buckwheat, and those are what I call field rats. We have a lot of them because we're along the river. You'll see the timber behind there. We have timber all around all our fields. We have fields that we can't even plant soybeans or corn in because they're surrounded on 3 sides by timber, and the deer just go out there and live in them all summer long, and they eat it right down to nothing. So the soybeans, there won't be any soybeans there by fall if you plant it too close to the timber. We use Merit seed for our corn, which is out of Ohio. It's an organic corn. And this is my mother standing out. She's outstanding in her field right now. So that's what we say she's doing. This is also her in a pollinator field. We have CRP where we have pollinator, we have pheasant habitat restoration, we have riparian buffers, we have tree planting CRP. We have lots of different kinds of CRP, almost all that you can get, we have. And we also have the wetland reserve, which is a government program. The river bottom that we have, which is only about 100 acres, will flood when the river floods. So we don't farm that at all. It used to be farmed before we got here all the time, but it's not farmed at all because it's in the wetland reserve program. We also work with the conservation stewardship program. The NRCS and the FSA programs come from there. The Forest Reserve, which is actually a state program, which is under fire right now at the state legislature. They may be changing that tremendously right now. If you want to look around, this being the first year, the Black-Eyed Susans come on really strong the first year in the mix. The mix has about 45 different seeds in these pollinators. And the mix the first year is pretty much the Black-Eyed Susans because they do really well coming along. Everything else is usually later. But if you look off to the left of my mother's shoulder, right there is a bergamot. And right over here is another bergamot, which they call them bee balms because the bees like them a lot. But the next year and the year after, actually every year after that, you get a lot better growth on all these different plants because some of them take a long time to establish and some of them, like the flowers there, establish in a hurry. In our organic operation, we have what's called a Treffler Tine Weeder. And this particular one is a Tine Weeder. They're made in Germany. We just started having it. We got it in 2016. It's kind of an interesting story of how we ended up with it. If you remember, Kim was saying that they do the organic also on the farming. Well, she had volunteered to demonstrate this. They brought 3 of them to the United States from Germany. They started in Illinois, they went across Iowa, down into Missouri, and they were coming back up, making a swing back up through to Chicago. And they had one last stop to do. And Kim had volunteered and said that they would demonstrate it on their fields. So about 2 days or maybe 1 day before it's supposed to be the demonstration, Kim called me and said, we don't want to do this demonstration thing because things didn't work out. Can you do it? And I said, okay, what is it? Well, you just have to hook onto this Tine Weeder and then just demonstrate it in the field. And I said, well, I think I can probably figure that out. So the day came and they brought it and we hooked it on and put it on the tractor and we went down through the bean field. The beans weren't this tall at that time. And they demonstrated how it worked and we went back and forth and there were people watching it and standing in the field and taking pictures. And then I was so impressed with the job that it was doing that I said, well, this tractor, this Tine Weeder is on my tractor. And I really think it needs to stay on my tractor. So we need to talk. And so we talked and he said, well, it's for sale. And I said, well, let's talk. And we haggled back and forth for a while and it stayed on my tractor. And I went out that afternoon after that field day and I ran until dark over all the fields that I could because it was doing such a wonderful job. I'd never seen a Tine Weeder. I'd never had a Tine Weeder. I'd never even been around a Tine Weeder. And I was sold on them on that few hours of that field day. It made a big difference. So they do an excellent job of getting in the row, the in-row weeds besides the cultivator. I also use a cultivator and then I'll alternate back and forth I'll go over it with the cultivator once, which tears the ground up enough and throws it in toward the center of the row. And then I'll go over it with the Tine Weeder, which will level it out and it'll loosen up any weeds that the cultivator and bring them right to the surface so they'll die then. We also use a 12-row cultivator. This is just shows you that you don't have to have the newest machinery to farm. This is a 1969 40-20 John Deere with a 12-row, 30-inch row. What they called at the time, they were made in the 70s, and they called them at the time, they called them a front mount cultivator, but actually they're a mid mount cultivator. In Europe, they have actual front mount machines that are mounted ahead of the tractor, and then another machine on the back of the tractor, where this one is actually in the center of the tractor, but it does a very good job once you get it set up, and very few people want these anymore. So if you find one, you can usually buy it for a pretty good price on it. And those clouds, this is probably, I think probably 2013, somewhere in there. Those clouds in the background are actually fake clouds. We didn't get any rain for over a month in there, and it would cloud up and everybody thought, oh, we're going to get some rain, and we didn't. And it made a big difference on all our crops because they sent us those fake clouds that didn't have any rain in them. Again, this is the Tine Weeder on the right side here, and you can see each one of those tines has a spring set up on it. So the tension on that is adjustable as you go down the field. You can adjust the tension to really heavy if you want to really dig, or to really light if the plant that you're working with, if the soybean or the corn plant is really young, you want just a light touch on it because you don't want to tear them out, but you want to get those weeds that are starting to grow. And then on the left side, you'll see that the end rows on all our crops, we plant with a 12-row planter. So we do 2 passes on the outside so you have room to turn your 12-row equipment. And that means you have 24 rows of end rows. So when I was going through the regular rows and set it up to come out to the end, at the end, instead of lifting it up and turning, I left it down and tilled with the Tine Weeder right across the rows. This is showing going at a 45-degree angle across the rows. So those tines were actually going in between the soybean plants in that row. And yes, I was driving over it with the tractor, but at that time, soybeans don't really care. They'll come back. If you did that when they were much taller, it wouldn't work as well because you'd kill them then. But you can actually go at an angle. You don't have to follow the rows when they're very young, which gives you an opportunity to get a lot more weeds out. This is on the planting. This was the day after planting. And I go out there with the Tine Weeder to remove those planter marks. If you look to the very far right side over in here, that's what I've just gone over with the Tine Weeder. And all these planter marks, we plant with a tractor that has dual wheels on it. Plus the planter has wheels almost every other set of rows, plus the press rows, press wheels behind the row are pressing the seed down. All those marks is where the first weeds will grow. Because you press that dirt around that weed seed, that gives it the chance to grow. So it's going to grow out of those. So if I can go out there and loosen that up, but not go too deep, so I stay above the seed and not move the seed around, I've already stopped a lot of those weeds from growing right there, because that takes off that pressure out of there and it loosens it up, which airs it out, which gives the weed seeds a chance not to grow, and the other seeds that are down deeper, the corn and the soybean, to grow. Can you run those pumpkin now?
Yeah,
Or-
so Nelson, what you can do is if you hover over the slide with your mouse at the bottom left-hand side, you see there's this little, yep. Right there. Click that. That should play.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, click it again.
It's not there. Oh, there it is.
Here, yeah. Yeah, looks like it doesn't want to work. Yeah, so I can go ahead and play these pumpkin.
You can play them?
Yeah, I'll play them. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. And
do I need to stop sharing?
Yeah, stop sharing. And then are you guys seeing my screen?
Yeah, we can see the.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, it's working. I can hear it. This is actually the the second thing. They've loaded the pumpkins. They load them in these dump boxes, and then they pull up alongside their semis and they dump them hydraulically into these semis. And it takes 2 dumps to fill a semi. So they're about 22,000 pounds of pumpkins in that each one of those things. So they end up with about 48,000 pounds of pumpkins in that semi. And you would probably think when you first looked at that, you would say, well, that's going to be mush on the bottom there with all dumping pumpkins like that. But it actually is not. These are not your jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. They're a Dickinson pumpkin, and they are very tough, and they have a very small center where the seeds is, and it's mostly meat, and that's why they get more of that pumpkin for the pumpkin pie filler that they can. They can that then, and then sell it under a variety of names. Some of it Seneca does itself, but Seneca usually doesn't have their name on it. They'll do it for anybody. If Walmart or Costco or Kroger's wants that, they can do all that and put their label on it and then go. Now, if we go to the next one.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is, they've gone through already before this picture was taken and put all these pumpkins in a windrow. They built all the machines to do this themselves because they've been in the business for so long. You don't go out and buy a pumpkin picker because they're the only ones that have them because they use them for themselves. The video is kind of bumpy there, but you get the idea that this tractor is straddling the row of pumpkins, and they go through this lift thing, which throws them up into the other one, and the other guy is driving the dump box, and that follows along, and the two of them communicate and keep them together, so you don't have your pumpkins flying back out on the ground. They go into the dump box. But that's pretty much the setup. So we didn't do any harvesting of the pumpkins. Seneca Foods did all the harvesting. And like Kim said, I would grow pumpkins again in a minute. In fact, less than a minute if I could, but they don't need us this far away from the packing of the plant. So can I get back on here now? Okay.
Nelson, I think I have a video of the Tine Weeder. Do you want me to show that too?
Is this, yeah.
Yeah, here, let me.
Yeah, if you do.
Yeah, let me share it back. Here, 1 second.
Yeah, either one of those will be fine. What you see on this Tine Weeder, you see these numbers down here, 0 to 9. There's an indicator on a piece of cable right there at 6 that you see on that. And that tells you as you're going down the field, you can change that tension on those springs on the tines as you go. So you can, if the ground's a little harder or a little softer, or you want to, whatever you want to change it to, you can change it as you go down the field. Yeah, that one's not going to play very well either, but it moves right along. You can go at 6 to 7 miles an hour down there, and I've tine weeded, and the soybeans are a foot tall, and I still can tine weed them. You'll lose a few leaves, but the soybeans will put the leaves back on. They don't care to lose a few leaves. You're not pulling any of them out of the ground. So
Do you want me to show this one?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to work well. They don't seem to be wanting to, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That's good. I'll go on with, get back on here.
So what you want to do?
Okay.
What you want to do now? Oh, yep, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, the challenges of organic production are many and various. Like Jamey and Kim both said that you have the 3-year production of no prohibited products on the ground. But the biggest challenge in organic production that we have found in all the years we've been doing is the weeds. And there are a lot of ways to come around that, but each year actually, it's like you didn't remember anything that worked last year because it's a different year. The ground was different. They got planted at a different time. The weeds from the previous year were different. So each year you kind of have to work at figuring out what the best thing for your ground and your situation is going to be. Timing is of the utmost importance. The timing of your planting, the timing of your cultivation, it's not something, if you're going to be organic and you like to take a boat ride on the lake, if you're going to take a boat ride on the lake when it's time to cultivate, you're not going to have very good crops. When the cultivation is ready and it needs to be done, you need to be there and you need to do it because it's a very short window, because it can rain on you or it can be too dry, but mostly the rain is the big problem. So you need to plant. We plant much later than conventional because we want to get that flush of weeds that comes with the working the ground. We'll get a flush of weeds and then work them in with a field cultivator or the Tine Weeder, and we'll take care of them, and that'll knock them back so the corn or the soybeans can get a head start on them. There's a lot of paperwork involved. You have the annual inspection that you have to do, but none of it is something that you can't overcome. It's just a matter of the good thing about the paperwork and the inspection is it actually helps make you a better farmer, because you see what you've done, you see how you did it, you see when you did it, and then you can say, oh, I shouldn't have done it then, or oh yeah, that was great, I really hit it just perfectly that time. Those are all the things that can help you in your farming, not only because you had to take care of that paperwork and inspection, but because you saw how well it worked for you or how well it didn't work for you. The big thing too is that the crop rotation prevents a lot of problems that you would normally have with pests, with disease, with soil health. So good crop rotation is very, very important. And you can't get the idea that, well, I'm going to go out and plant corn and beans and then throw some oats on it and say, oh yeah, I took care of that, and then go back to the corn and beans. It doesn't work that way. You've got to understand that the corn is probably going to be a 1 in 4 crop, and the soybeans will probably be a 1 in 4 year crop. And you've got to work around that because you need the oats, you need alfalfa, but there are markets for everything else too. And as was said before, the dollars are better, so you don't actually have to have the great big yields, because you're going to end up with more money in your pocket, and that's the whole point of it. The costs are much less of operating it and planting it and running it. So you can actually come up with a better net income and not so much a gross. The gross income doesn't do you any good if all the money goes out into the world that you're planting, either buying equipment or buying inputs. You want to keep that money in your pocket, and with organic, you can do that much better. I think that's it. Yep.
Awesome. Nelson, thank you so much for the amazing presentation. This was just great to see. Thank you for sharing your story. Loved seeing your mom in all those pictures. She's a beautiful woman. And if I read the handlines very good, what I could tell is you're going to live a long life.
Hope so.
Not sure about the lottery thing, but maybe. So Jamey has a question for you, and I kind of have a follow-up question for you after Jamey's, but he says, do you only use the Tine Weeder on soybeans?
No, it works much better on soybeans, but I can use it on the corn. You just have to be careful. There are times when the corn can get snapped off pretty easily. So you have to adjust your tension, but that's where you get off and look at it. When I got that machine, I said, where's the operator's manual for this machine? And the guy from Germany said, it's right out there in your field. And I go, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, run down the field a ways, stop the tractor, get off, walk out behind there and walk down the rows that you've just gone over. And it'll tell you what's going on. It'll tell you if you're knocking them down, if you're digging them out, what's going on is happening behind you, but you have to go look at it. And he said, and then you can change your adjustments or do whatever you need. They actually in Europe, and these are used in the Netherlands also, they do a lot of vegetables with it. They actually do oats. And when he asked my rotation, I said oats and alfalfa. And he said, well, that's great. You can run it through the oats. And I said, no, I can't, because I put an underseeding of alfalfa in there. So I would tear out all my alfalfa if I went through the oat field. If I didn't have the alfalfa in there, then I could probably go through the oats, since it's just regular oats, but I don't raise it that way, so I can't do that. But they do a lot of vegetables. They do a lot of hill farming with those potatoes, things in hills. And the good thing about this particular tine weeder is that the tines will stay on the side of those hills. They won't go sideways and go down to the bottom of the ridges. They'll stay right where they're supposed to be, and which makes it a big difference between some of the other tine weeders that are available also.
Awesome. How long have you had your Tine Weeder for, Nelson?
2016. We got it in the early part of the summer of 2016. And that was the first Trefler tine weeder in Iowa. And it was the third Trefler tine weeder in the United States at that time. Now there are quite a few more. They've been bringing them over hot and heavy. There are a bunch up in northern Iowa that are using 40 and 60 foot tine weeders. We have the 30 footer, but their fields are a little different than ours. So
yeah. Well, I love to hear that serendipitous story of you having to demonstrate it on your field day and then getting it. How cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that's all Kim's fault.
Yep, Kim, good job, Kim. Kim also has a comment. She says, thanks, Nelson, for including all the other programs you do with wetlands, CRP, pollinator, and CSP. We do the same thing. Good job, guys. Thank you for doing that. Are there any other questions for Nelson? If there are no other questions, I actually have a question for Jamey. Jamey, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the non-GMO verified products, are they allowed to be sprayed by pesticides even though they will get the non-GMO verified seal? Do you know?
I'm not sure what that certification requires. I just know around here, we've got a lot of non-GMO growers, and they grow corn and soybeans, and they spray those crops with more herbicides than the GMO guys do.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, I also wanted to give a shout to my dad. He's on this workshop. Thank you for coming, Scott. He's also a farmer in Northeast Iowa. So thanks for being here, Scott. And thanks for everyone, for all the amazing speakers, Nelson, Kim, Megan, and Jamey. This was wonderful. What I will do, you guys, as part of our grant process reporting, I will actually send out a quick survey to everyone that attended today. And if you could please fill out the survey, that gives us the opportunity to provide feedback to Sarah, our grantor, as well as give us the opportunity to understand how to better serve you and what other things to provide to you. And so the survey will be coming via email as well. I'll be sharing my slides with you guys via email. And also I'll be uploading this to our YouTube channel and divide it into little chapters for easier viewing. So feel free to check it out on YouTube, share with friends or family or anyone that could benefit from this information. And definitely come back onto our website and check out our calendar for additional workshops and events coming up. Again, thank you everybody for being here today, and hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
I have a question for Nelson.
Oh, sure. Nelson, there's a question for you from Marsh.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Nelson. How are you?
Good.
Hey, I have a question regarding being a steward of the soil. This is kind of off topic just a little bit, but what are your thoughts on saving the soil by just putting it in pasture?
Well, it does save the soil, especially if that pasture is a little rough and it would have been farmed and run down into the ditch because it would have washed off because it's too steep. But the actual, depending on, you'll have to increase your seeding on it, because what pastures eventually do is that they turn into one species. Basically, you'll have a brome, it'll turn into brome, or it'll turn into Kentucky bluegrass. You'll need to go through every few years and spread some clover seed or sweet clover or something on there to increase the diversity that you have in your pasture to make it better, because a one thing plant in the pasture is not really doing anything good for it. It doesn't put the grass doesn't put any nitrogen in. If you could actually put a legume in there, it would increase it to the point that it would actually be putting nitrogen in, and then the grass would use the nitrogen. So just to leave it that way is not really that great of an idea, but you can make it better by adding a diversity of seeds in there.
Okay, thank you much. You take care.
Yep.
Thank you, Thomas, for the question. Any other final questions for either Nelson, Kim, or Jamey? Or me? All right, well, if there's no more questions, again, thank you everybody for your attendance today and for being part of our Growing Organic Expertise workshops. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson.